Hi everyone and welcome to Woven. Oh, that's a thing, isn't it? Welcome to Woven. I don't know where we're going to go with that, but somewhere. Great to have you here and to say out loud, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, no matter your race or ethnicity, no matter your gender identity or gender expression or sexual orientation, no matter where you come from or how people have thought of you. We are just so happy that you're here and you're so welcome here at Woven. Danny's going to do some stuff for us. And then we're so happy to have Alice speak for our first time.
Yeah,
Alice. And that's really exciting for us. So thank you all for being here.
I'm doing worship, which is crazy, if you know where I am, with all of that stuff. But I'm once again going to do something a little bit different. I am going to play, but first I just want to kind of share what I wrote at 3 a.m. this morning. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Recently, I felt very powerless. Weakness feels like my middle name, and most days my chest aches, and I feel the echoes of that pain deep inside. And honestly, at times like these, I fail to find the words to say, much less words in songs to sing. Nothing feels right when it feels like the world is crumbling around me. And I know I'm not alone feeling like this, but that doesn't happen. I had a whole plan to do a meditation and play piano like I did last time, but even when I was brainstorming, nothing I did or said or played felt right. And a little voice in my head is screaming at me right now, just like I did at 3 a.m. this morning, saying, how dare I be so unprepared? But I know that's not coming from me. That voice is not mine, and I know that the best thing I know how to do is to show up authentically. Even when it feels impossible, even when it feels off, even when it feels pointless or useless, it's not. I am here. And so are you, and that is good. Besides, this week I kept seeing one phrase pop up in various places over and over and over again. Art is resistance. Resistance to broken and oppressive systems, resistance to doomsday and nihilistic thinking, resistance to the absence of hope, resistance to pessimism, resistance to whatever else is soul depriving and killing. Art is resistance. And something else besides the hypercritical voice in my brain is telling me that this phrase has to mean something. So for the next little bit, I'm gonna assume that what I'm doing already means something, and I don't have to do anything beyond making art for it to be my resistance. And as I do, as I just play and create for a little bit, I invite you to open your heart to the art, the music, the sound, and later also Alex's story. I lost my place. Oh, and as you do this, join in the resistance, whatever that means to you. I just hope you will be inspired, encouraged, calmed, comforted, heard, empowered, and that you feel everything else you need to feel right now. Let this music wash over you.
fact, so prepared for this, and have practiced this so many times and know exactly what words are going to come out of my mouth, and it's going to be great. I know exactly what's happening. Hi, I'm Alex. Most of you already know that, but hi. I'm a senior at Asbury, a college that should not be named. I truly have not practiced this at all. I finished writing this at midnight this morning, so I don't know when I'm going to start actually talking about stuff.
You're already doing better than all of us.
Okay. So I guess I'm kind of here to talk, which I guess I'm doing good at. And I mean, I've been going to Woven since my sophomore year, give or take. Yeah, beginning of sophomore year, because that's right about when I realized that I was not straight. Which I know is a total shock. I'm dressed so heterosexual right now. Who put this tie on me? But yeah, I'm happy to be here and I guess tell you guys more about myself. And specifically more about, I guess, where I am in a God way. I don't want to say Christian way because that feels a little bit yucky. But yeah, so I guess the main thing about me is I'm a pastor's kid, which, boo. And so both my parents, my mom growing up was a deacon in the United Methodist Church. My dad was a youth pastor in the United Methodist Church. He was basically an associate pastor, just about the title, just because of how way things worked out. And so the thing you need to know about me is a lot of my faith has been totally wrapped up in my parents growing up, which happens a lot if you're a pastor's kid because they're your main mode of theological questions, basically. So I guess to understand my journey through fucking theology or whatever shit, you kind of have to understand, I guess, how my parents have affected me, which we don't have time to go into all the details of my tragic backstory. So I'm going to try and keep it brief, but there are some important things. I don't know. It's just going to go in there. There are some important things I guess I should talk about. So for those of you who don't know, most of you know already, my mom is currently a professor at Asbury, which is so fun when you're a lesbian and at Asbury, and also when your mom is a New Testament prof.
And also you're a Bible Theo major.
And also you're a Bible Theo major. Yeah. So just got whammy. But basically, so I was born in February 2002 in Durham, England, because my mom was getting her PhD at the time. You didn't know that? No? Okay, well, there you go. That's why I'm here. So my mom actually put my middle name as Faith, which is ironic, because she was like, wow, I'm preggers, I need... She basically told me that she was pregnant and she was at a PhD program where even before she was pregnant, there were a bunch of gross men being like, oh, I can't believe your husband let you get a PhD. And so she was like, huh? Disgusting, yeah. And so she basically had to have faith to both pop a kid out of her and get a PhD. So, yeah, we moved to Canton, Ohio when I was 2.5. My mom got a job as a professor at Malone University, which is another Christian university up in Ohio. Actually, when I was starting to write stuff down for this, I found out that they had a similar situation to what Asbury did, where they had a professor who was let go for being affirming. About a year after my mom left. But that situation was different because that professor was actually, I think if I read the article correctly, she was gay and planning to get married to a woman. And the university was like, bye. So, huh? So yeah, before I get into the specifics of like the detriments of having like a Bible prof and a youth pastor for your parents, there are some other, I think, context things I should probably set the scene for. So when I was a kid, I was like picked on pretty severely. Actually, on my first day of kindergarten, I got on the bus and got beat up in the back of the bus as a 5-year-old by a bunch of 4th graders. And that pretty much set the tone for like all of my pre-college education. It was one of those things where like I excelled academically, but socially I was kind of not great at it, and so kids picked on me. And so social navigation was a bit of a challenge, but there was also that added pressure from my family socially, and the idea of my brother has cerebral palsy, which like, I love Connor, he can be a bit of an ass sometimes, but he's like totally in my corner, which is great. So basically when he and I were both younger, he needed a lot of surgeries, which meant that I was like 6 or 7, and I had to kind of like step into an older sibling role. So I was basically parentified from a young age, which is, I think probably says a lot about me. I am an Enneagram 2. So basically, like, I was bullied from a young age, and there's also this idea of like, I have to take care of everyone else over myself. And that just kind of snowballed when I was growing up, and I guess that's wrong with Enneagram 2. And so like, when I got to college, one of my friends actually said, Alex, you had a bad childhood. And at the time, I was like, huh? But looking back now, I kind of get it. I can't, again, go into all the details for the sake of time. But basically, a lot of different factors served to have me lean into that, like, put everyone else above yourself mentality. And, like, evangelicalism does that a lot. There's, like, this whole idea of, like, you know, love others as yourself, but also you yourself are bad, which is why you need Jesus. So it's this like double whammy of like, you're bad, so you need to help everyone else because you're bad, so you don't deserve to take care of yourself, but also Jesus. Yeah. And so when I was like 10 or 11, when all this was also happening, my dad got a job at Christ United Methodist Church up in Louisville, Ohio, because that's how they say it up there before anyone gets mad at me.
I was about to flip to say what
No, like, we actually had a bunch of Kentuckians come up there at one point for like a mission trip or something, and they kept saying Louisville, and we were all like, what is that? It's Louisville. So it was a bit of a learning curve coming down here. But basically, that's when I really started to get into the whole pastor's kid thing. And it was a lot of that, like, putting everyone else above yourself. When I was like 12, my dad pulled me aside and told me that, like, because when you're a pastor's kid, you're constantly aware of your parents' reputation, because your reputation is their reputation. And so my dad basically pulled me aside and told me that, like, no matter what else was going on, I always had to tell people that I was doing okay, which is really kind of fucked up because I was 12. So basically, there were a lot of other factors in my childhood that kind of like dogpiled on me when I was really young. There's all of this pressure from evangelicalism, all of this pressure from my family to be like the golden child who like always put others above herself because that made it easier for mom and dad to take care of Connor, and all of this stuff. Like at school, if you're like I really started to put a lot of pressure on myself to be like socially perfect, because if I don't do anything wrong, then nobody can pick on me. But of course that's impossible because we're in middle school and everybody does something stupid. So yeah, I forgot to mention before I started this, I did put a note at the top of my notes, but there are parts of what I'm going to talk about that involve mental health, suicidal ideation, stuff like that. So we're about to get get into that territory, I should have said so beforehand, but I guess I just didn't see it because I'm a little bit nervous. So if that's like something that you need to like tune out for a second, now's the point where you should probably start tuning out or like go to the bathroom or something. I apologize for not saying that earlier, I should have. But yeah, basically all of that stuff snowballed. And to some extent, I've always sort of struggled with depression, anxiety. Most of it was like genetic because I got all of the bad genetics from my dad's side of the family, which, like, a lot of bad stuff from my dad's side of the family. But like depression, anxiety, a lot of stuff happened when I was a kid, traumatic experiences, so it's just kind of like all of that snowball, plus the social anxiety, plus the pressure from church, plus the pressure from my family, plus the pressure from trying to not be weird in middle school. And so when I was about 13 or 14, I was in like 8th grade, it got to this point where I just kind of cracked. Because nobody can put that much pressure on themselves, even as an adult, and come out okay. But when you're 13, it's like everything is the end of the world. So to have all of that pressure on top of that, it didn't end well. So like up until I was like 13, 14, I had been struggling with depression and to some extent suicidal ideation for a couple months. But one night it just got really bad, and I won't get into the details too much. I did not end up going through with an attempt, but I had a plan to. And I do want to preface this part right here because when I was in evangelicalism, I had told this story specifically a couple times, and it was always, like, I think in evangelicalism, there's this expectation for miracles, and I don't want to perpetuate that. So what happened to me was, to some extent, a miracle, but also, like, that miracles are weird. They don't always happen when they should. Sometimes they happen and you're like, what? I could have gone down to the store and gotten that or something, you know? So Dad, pick up the good kush. It's the dollar store. How good could it be? Kind of stuff like that. So yeah, so basically I was, in the bathroom, I was, prepared to do stuff you couldn't come back from. And I just kind of like, when you're in a depressive episode, anxiety, attack, whatever, there's so much going on in your head. Like you can't hear yourself think because everything else is so loud. And so all of this was going on, and there was just like, I guess you could say it was like Moses parting the Red Sea. I can't think of a different metaphor. Fuck you, evangelicalism. And so it was kind of like this, just like, I hesitate to say voice because I promise I'm not schizophrenic. But there was just kind of like this, I don't know if it was like a thought or like a voice or something, but it basically like cut through everything and was basically like, okay, this has gone too far, you need to go downstairs and talk to your parents. And so, like up until that point, like it's one of those things when you're a pastor's kid, you know about Christianity, you know all the rules and stuff, and you like ask theological questions, but it's also kind of just like the default, and it's not really like a lot of people, especially at Asbury, have stories of like growing up in Christianity, and they like give their like self to Christ at a young age, and I didn't do that. Like that was never really what happened to me. What happened to me was I almost killed myself, and then God kind of was like, nuh-uh.
I'm so sorry.
God said nuh-uh, and then I was like, whoa, God's real? That's crazy. And I do want to say, as much problems as I have with my parents, when I did go down to talk to them, they immediately got me help. So they're like, my parents are the kind of like evangelicals where they're not fundamentalist, but they're also if that makes sense. It's almost worse because they're complicated and complex. They're like full people, which is crazy because they're your parents, my parents, not your parents, my parents. When you're like, it's crazy to think about your parents as like full, complete human beings who have complex complications, but they're complicated. So as many problems as I have with them, I will give them credit where credit's due. I was 13 and I came downstairs and was like, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. And my parents both flipped out, got me the help I needed immediately, got me up to a psychiatrist, counselor. They took me to the general doctor. They almost took me to like a psychiatric ward. They ended up not doing that. So they got me all the help that I needed. And so, once upon a time, that would be the wrap-up, I guess, of my evangelical testimony. But we're obviously not evangelical, and there's a lot of other shit that happened. And so I've kind of played down a lot of things because, again, for the sake of time, I don't want to trauma dump in front of you guys because that doesn't feel constructive. Sometimes, like, that's okay, but I want this to be constructive. So, that moment was kind of like where I actually, like, stepped into Christianity and was like, okay, I believe in this now. So, God did a cool thing, but then I was also still in evangelicalism. So, God did a cool thing, and I stepped into the only Christianity that I knew, which was my parents' evangelicalism. And so there was still a lot of shame culture wrapped up in that. There was still, to some extent, like still that pressure that I was experiencing before. It was kind of like you pop a balloon, but then you kind of piece it back together and you start to inflate it again. That's a bad metaphor. That's not what I meant. But like that idea of like, I kind of like started over. There were still bad things, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I basically stepped even further into all of this gunk that my parents believed in, all of this like evangelical shame culture, all of that. It's kind of like someone stops you from walking in front of a bus, and then you get on the bus, and the bus is like really weird and gunky and gross, but you're like, wow, so glad I didn't get hit by a bus, so glad that I'm actually going somewhere, but also I might catch COVID on this bus, you know? It's funny because I had COVID last week. So basically, 2015, gay marriage was legalized. My parents were like, oh no, gay people married? And like all of that like political climate, basically the United Methodist Conference in like circa 2017, 18, 19, I don't actually remember. I was in high school. And so they had this whole conference about whether or not homosexuality was against the Bible, and I remember my mom giving like a talk in front of our church that we went to as a deacon in the Methodist church, like kind of explaining the situation and everything. And again, like this was pre-college, I didn't super have a lot of people, in general I didn't have a whole lot of friends in high school. I had friends before then, but then they were like less friends, more like polite bullies, and then that kind of stopped. So after that, I didn't really have a whole lot of friends, much less like queer friends around me. Okay, well there were queer people in my dad's youth group, but then that's also like my dad's youth group. And I was good friends with them, but it was also still like very much within like the context of my parents, you know? Like I said, a lot of who, like how my faith has been defined is through my parents, which kind of sucks. So I guess the start of my, maybe gay people aren't bad? Maybe gay not against Bible? What? That probably started like that questioning of, maybe heterosexuality isn't the default in God's design. Started when I was about 17. So all of that other stuff under my belt, still very much firmly within evangelicalism. And I had just, looking through the internet, had people I talk to online sometimes, I come across the word asexual. And yeah, and I had no idea what that meant. And so I looked it up. There's aven.org, AVEN.org. lot of asexual resources. I looked through all of them, and at the end of it, I was like, this isn't normal. Most people don't feel like this. I thought you guys were exaggerating sexual attraction. This can't be real. And at that point, I realized, oh, that's me. I'm not as straight as I thought I was. But like, I was still under the impression of asexual but hetero-romantic, because there's a difference between romantic and sexual attraction. We don't have time to get into all that. I do have a PowerPoint. I'm not gonna pull it up right now. But yeah, basically, that question of that realization that I was asexual. But then I did come out to my parents when I was 17 with a PowerPoint presentation, because of course I did. Because it was hard to explain, because I was 17 and my parents had no idea what it was. And then they were not super thrilled. And I was like, why are you upset? I'm not breaking any rules. Like, I'm not being gay. Yet. And then there was that question of, oh, wait, heterosexuality, according to my parents, is the default, like, good creation order. This places me outside that. So what does that mean? And then it was that sort of started snowballing. So when all of that's going on, I also ended up going to Asbury, because Malone University was very much like, I was in Canton, Ohio. Malone's in Canton. Everybody knows about Malone. Everybody knew that my mom was a professor there. If I went to Malone, everybody would know who my mom was, and there would be a lot of kids from my high school there, and I did not like high school, so I was like, I'm going 6 hours away. Excuse me. And then it turns out my mom got a job roughly around the same time, and COVID hit, all that fun stuff. So I ended up coming to Asbury with all of that still snowballing in the back of my head. Still very much, again, within that evangelical frame of my parents, but I wasn't living in the same house as them anymore. So it wasn't like, like when you're living in your parents' house, there's a certain extent of like, you're afraid to say things in your room alone because you're worried they're gonna hear it through the walls. They're in my walls. So when I came to Asbury, I was one of those girlies who like thought they knew everything about the Bible and all that other fucking bullshit, because my parents were pastors and they knew everything, and my parents were never wrong, right? So that meant that therefore everything that I believe could not be wrong, because mom and dad like 100% like know what the fuck they're talking about. Spoilers, they didn't. And so I came to Asbury, and I ended up meeting, literally in the same suite as me, like other people who, shout out to Morgan. I met Morgan, who very obviously is, you're queer. I know.
Don't tell my gay boyfriend.
I can't let your gay boyfriend know. And I met Morgan, I met another person who did not want to be outed at any point, but another person who is queer. And I also met Josie Pruitt, who is like one of my best friends. She's a straight ally. She's the alliest ally to ever ally.
Yeah.
Shout out Josie Pruitt. She is the token straight. Love her to death. And so I met all of these people around me who I became very close friends with very quickly, because we all trauma dumped about how we were at one point like very depressed, like on my third day.
Yeah.
Part of that is because you got this tattoo, cross, as we call it. It's not like I was trying to keep it hidden. I'm very comfortable talking about that. And so I met all of these people, and I also was under the context of, I'm at a university that says that being in a queer relationship is not cool. And also, like, it was kind of like everything that my parents had always told me, like, put into practice, like, with authority. And I immediately was like, this is bullshit. Because I had people around me who were actively affected by that. And to some extent, when I was in Ohio, I did have people who were affected by, like, the Methodist Church and all of that. But it was never on on my radar because I wasn't in the same space as them. I wasn't living, in my mind, I wasn't under that, you know? Like, I was excluded from that. It didn't apply to me. So basically, freshman year, I got humbled a lot because it was kind of that realization of, oh, this is bullshit and it actually harms people. And so I basically, in a freshman year, I basically speed ran. That's the joke. I walked in freshman year homophobic. Not like homophobic where like, I hate gay people, but like homophobic in the sense of like, I disagree and I think it's bad. So then, speed run, next semester, I'm immediately like, oh, maybe being gay isn't bad, but if being gay isn't bad, then like, am I gay? And so it's kind of like that. Once you take away that like framework of mom and dad, everything kind of like fell out and was like, oh, you're a lesbian. So basically at the end of that freshman year, I did basically go, wait a minute, I'm not straight. What does that mean? Because it's one thing to ponder theology when you're not, like, to some extent I think there is a sort of, I don't want to say privilege, but it's a little bit different when you're straight and you're pondering theology of homosexuality because, like, let's say like a straight person's in a room with like all of these theological questions just in a vacuum, it affects them differently than it would like a gay person in a room with all of that theology in a vacuum. So once I realized, oh, this does apply to me, not only does it hurt other people around me, but it also hurts me. I basically was like, shit. So I questioned a lot of that over the summer. Eventually came up to the conclusion that I was in fact a homosexual. Homo-romantic, technically, because I am also asexual. Asexual, lesbianism, shout out. And so basically realized I was gay, realized at the same time that all of this did apply to me, and almost threw up because that's like a really bad realization to realize, oh, my life just got 10 times harder. And so basically it came back to Asbury, had a great support system, had people in Journey, the queer support group, shout out to Journey, love you guys. The sun is right in my eyes.
Do you need sunglasses?
No, you know what, it's God, it's the Holy Spirit. I'm shining with the inner light of the Holy Spirit. Anyway, no, it's fine. So basically all that happened, start actually genuinely questioning things, read a crap ton of books, crap ton of articles, going, is homosexuality in fact not against the Bible? Have we mistranslated these verses? Have these been misinterpreted, misapplied? And so all of that happens, and I'm still, like again, it's one of the things where it's like pressure of thinking like, oh, if my parents ever find out, they're gonna see me super differently. Because my parents were very involved with that Methodist church thing of like, oh, like, this is gonna tear the church apart if we let homosexuals get married or something, or like stuff like that. Very actively involved. My mom started working on a new church, the Global Methodist Church, like right when I started questioning all of that stuff. So it very much was like, I knew where they stood on it, and I knew that like the second I came out, if I came out, they would see me differently. And so all of that pressure built up again, and I ended up having like a super bad, mental health is no joke, gang. If you guys have mental health problems, please, it is not a weakness to lean on other people, because I had a very bad mental breakdown because all of this stuff was just going on in the background, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And my friends found me, shout out friends, not the show, I haven't seen the show, I know that's blasphemy. They found me, but my mom ended up coming to pick me up, and while I was in this state of like, not okay, I ended up coming out to my mom because it was just kind of like, okay, this is gonna continue to make me stressed out. Came out to my mom, she was like, I still love you, even though I disagree with your lifestyle, which is yucky. Not the lifestyle, lifestyle's great. I would know. Here you
Bringing the lesbian yearning to church.
I did bring the lesbian yearning to church. It's always here. And basically, that happened. I asked her, I basically begged her not to tell my dad because my dad was, he is a bit of an asshole. He, again, didn't have time to go into a lot of it, but like, basically a lot of the time whenever anything queer got brought up, he'd do like, oh, gross, or like why do they, what's these data promos or something? Like that fucking bullshit, like shut the fuck up.
Does that sound like the Californians from SNL?
When he's being homophobic, his voice does drop down an octave, so it is very much like, gross, homos. Sorry. So basically, I begged her not to tell my dad. She promised that she wouldn't. I left the next day after getting like basically gave myself a day off from everything. Mental health recovered a little bit. The second I was out of the house, she told my dad. And then lied to me about it for a week. And then when she told me, she outed me to my dad. She told me that. And I was like, okay, I need to not be around you for right now. So I ended up not talking to my parents for about 6 weeks. And like, here's the thing, right? When you're a pastor's kid, your faith is like completely tied up with your parents and the way that they practice their faith. And when that happens, it becomes very difficult to distinguish between what's your faith and what's your mom and dad's faith. So when you have a falling out with your parents, it's like going bungee diving but cutting the cord, or like parachuting. You don't actually know if the parachute on your back is actually a parachute or just some weird fucking backpack that weighs 1 million pounds. So for a while during those 6 weeks, I felt super untethered. I didn't know what was going on. I felt like what my mom said, one of the things she said to me was that people who are more progressive in their theology are splitting hairs to get away with things, which for like 6 weeks I was like, am I splitting hairs to get away with things? Maybe I'm just looking for an excuse to like sin or whatever. And about that time, that's when I came to Woven. I think it was like right before and pretty much right after I had that falling out with my parents. And it was like really important because when you're here, it's like you're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to like make inferences, observations, questions, no matter where you are in your journey. That's the name of the gay group. So being here means being able to see so many queer people and you know what I'm trying to say, straight allies who were like, not only willing to ask those questions, but are like, yes, you are okay, you're beautiful, you're made in the image of Christ, like, God celebrates you. He doesn't just tolerate you being gay, he celebrates you being gay. And so that was like a lot, that meant a lot to me. And then it was also kind of evidence that my parents did not, in fact, know what the fuck they were talking about, because everything that they were like telling me, like basically it was kind of like, no, it's actually this. I'm not explaining it right, but there's just like a lot of stuff that kind of layered up. Basically like in opposition to my parents, like perfectly lined up. Not perfectly, I shouldn't say that. I still do have a lot of questions. But like a place where I was able to like actually separate myself from my parents' faith and be like, no, I don't want to do it that way. So basically that's some motherfucker. Sorry. And so basically that's where I ended up. That's, again, like understanding my faith means understanding where I am with my parents. I do talk to my parents again. It's a little rocky. It's not 100% great, but it's also, I was able to isolate from COVID at their house, and it was pretty okay. So growing a lot, I've been here, and I've grown a lot in this like safe space. And obviously I don't know everything, I'm still learning, and the bottom line is I'm not going to do faith the way my parents did, and this is a safe space to explore that, and I'm happy to be here, talking to all of y'all. So, I don't have a good outro. What's the Olive Garden slogan? I saw something about this the other day. When you're here, you're family. When you're queer, you're family? I don't know. Sorry, that was really bad. Okay.
Give it up for Alex. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It was just right. So thank you for it. We're going to have a communion time now. And this isn't a time that is supposed to box us in to the way maybe it's been thought of in the past. I'd love for communion for us to be this open time where we get to experience it in a new way, where it's not tethering us to exclusivity. Communion has been used throughout the years as a method of exclusivity. And we believe that communion is supposed to be this idea of inclusion, of inclusivity. And so today, as you go back and get your things, we'll take it together here. So bring it up to your seat. We'll take it together in celebration that, Alex, you are celebrated by God the way you are. That each of you are celebrated by God the way you are right now, right here today. Go ahead and get your things. Thins kind of guy, or a goldfish, a queer person.
Or goldfish gay? What about if you're a queer goldfish?
Yes, that's great. A queer goldfish person.
Rainbow fish.
You could be a queer thin person too. Any of these are great. And that's sort of the idea, is that whatever we say at the beginning, whatever your socioeconomic status, whatever your race or ethnicity, whatever your sexual orientation, orientation or gender identity or gender expression, no matter any of these things that we talk about, Jesus says, you are a part of this with me. You are included. You are celebrated as you are. And so we take this in celebration of Christ's celebration of each of us. And we drink this together in the same way. The blood of Christ shed for the inclusion of the world. And in remembrance of that, we do this together. Well, it really is so good to have you all here today. It's great to be together and to celebrate, to say that we get to do this together. I love you all. I'm so thankful for each of you. I failed to do announcements at the beginning, and so I'm going to do that now. And one of the things we're going to be, as we come under Beaumont, is all the money is going to change. And so if you are someone that is giving to Woven through Donor Box, we need you to stop that. Like, stop your monthly money to Donor Box. And then next week, we'll bring you a new CR code that you can then put it into that CR code, which will then go into the Beaumont pile. And then everything that we do at Woven will come out of that pot instead of out of the Woven one, because Woven will cease to exist as that financial entity. If you are interested, another part of joining Beaumont is if you're interested in being a part of a team, all of the teams that are at Beaumont are now will also be our teams. And so there are really 5 big teams. One is, man, so you can do this whether you come to Beaumont at all. And absolutely, just as even if you only come to Woven, you can absolutely do this. So there's an administration finance team, there's a care for people, congregational care team, there is a worship team that does planning and thinking about worship.
CFT.
The congregation, the formation team, Christian formation team. Yeah, which is Sunday school education and things. By the way, we've toyed with the idea of having a Sunday school for Woven. Remember Erica that was here about a month ago? And she's coming back next week. She would be really interested in doing a Sunday school class for us here at Woven, which would be just amazing. So anyway, that team, and then the 5th team is the Woven team. And so if that was something that you wanted to be a part of, any of those things, let us know.
And this isn't one of those things, where they're just like, we just want it, like asses in the seats type thing. Like, they want your input. Like, they don't just want you to sit in there and be somebody that's on the team. Like, they actually want you to voice your opinion and such. So, I know y'all have opinions.
Yeah, Yeah, and they really value your opinion. They want new ideas. They want younger people to their input. In the same way, if you want to be in the Beaumont directory, let Logan know. He'll be back next week. Next week, Erica will be here and doing another talk with Logan. And then on the 19th, Derek, and on the 26th, we're going to have a party at this time, so we'll meet at 3:30. And church, after morning service at 11, then there's a potluck that everybody's welcome to. You know, if you haven't done the Beaumont woven potluck, it's a good thing. You want to check it. And then we're going to decorate the church. And so that's all on the 26th. And then we are into Advent season. Also, just to mention for the future, December 24th, we won't be having service. The 24th or the 31st, both Sundays, we won't be having 3:30 service. We'll be having, you can join us at 11 o'clock for the Beaumont service on the 24th, and again at, I think it's 6:30.
Yeah, that's when the music starts.
6:30 is music on the 24th. So there will be 2 services here, but not the afternoon, just morning and evening on Christmas Eve. The 24th. And then the 31st, no service here, party at Logan's, 3:30 on the 31st. And that's all the announcements. Yeah.
Rent, Saturday.
Yeah, some of us, who else is going to rent on Saturday? Good, a bunch of us. A bunch of us are going to that. So that will be Saturday. Rent in Louisville.
I've got some information here to give out to anybody that's going, so see me afterwards.
Great. See Charlie for that. Thanks everyone. Great to be with you.
What key is it?
See you next week.